right, so tonight we have Mr. Benjamin Evans from the National Lawyers Guild, along with Ms. Celine Marquez, also from the National Lawyers Guild, and they're here to present to us again on, regarding the protests that have been happening in Providence. Some of it, as it was explained to me, some of the things that they've observed and wish to relate to this panel. So with that said, I'll turn it over to the both of you.
Thank you, Chairman Figueroa. For those of you who, For those of you who might not know me, my name is Benjamin Evans. I'm an attorney who practices right next door to Rhode Island in Fall River, Massachusetts. And I've lived in Providence for a long time. I grew up in Providence, went to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School on Camp Street, and I'm very happy to be here speaking to you all. I think the Providence External Review Authority's work is really important, and I'm so grateful for everything you all are doing, keeping an eye on the police in Providence. So as the agenda mentioned, Jane Marquez and I are both attorneys. We both actually practice in Massachusetts, and we're both members of the National Lawyers Guild, which is an organization that might not be immediately familiar to Rhode Islanders, but it's been around since 1937. It grew out of the movement at the time during the New Deal, when attorneys and legal workers wanted to support the work of the New Deal. It came out of that movement, and it was the first integrated National Bar Association in the United States, because at the time the American Bar Association was still segregated. So the Lawyers Guild started in 1937. We have a very small but active chapter here in Rhode Island. And the Legal Observer program that we participate in started around 1968, when you started having very large demonstrations, notably in New York City at Columbia University, and obviously in Chicago at the time of the Democratic National Convention in 1968. And the idea for it is to have a system of attorneys and legal workers for providing legal support designed to enable people to express their dissent, to express their First Amendment activities without having to fear the types of reprisals that certainly the people saw on the streets of Chicago in 1968. And we have these little hats. I'll try to show this so that we're identifiable to the police and to protesters. It just says National Lawyers Guild Legal Observer. It's our trademark fluorescent green hat. Actually, a few weeks ago on the front page of the Providence Journal had a headline about police and protesters clash in the streets of Providence, and one of our legal observers, actually Attorney Chloe Davis, was featured on in that photograph, and she's there wearing the trademark green legal observer hat. So that's what we do. Since the police murdered George Floyd on May 25th, obviously there have been a large number of protests here in Providence, and we've been there for almost all of those. And I myself, I was at the protest that the Black Lives Matter Rhode Island organized on May 30th that began in Burnham Park and went to the State House on June 5th. Oh, and on that same day, actually, May 30th, there was also a car protest at the ACI that I was also legal observing at. June 5th, obviously there was a very large protest called by Gen Z, We Want to Live, the three young women who organized that. They had over, I think, 100,000 people, according to the Providence Journal, that were there on June 5th in Providence. June 12th, I was in Woonsocket, legal observing at a Black Lives Matter demonstration there. June 14th, there was another rally at the State House in Providence. June 19th, there was a car rally in Providence that I was legal observing at. And specifically, we wanted to talk about what we saw on July 23rd, there was a demonstration in Providence, and July 25th. And I'll also just mention, if I may, that just last night there was also a Black Lives Matter demonstration. I was legal observing at that too. They began at the Public Safety Complex on Dean Street, marched all through Providence, up and down Atwells Avenue, and Broadway, into downtown Providence, and ended up back at the Public Safety Complex. And I would suggest that what was particularly notable about the Black Lives Matter demonstration in Providence last night was that this was organized by Prov X PVD, I believe, which is, obviously a group of young people, very passionate, and as Chairman Figueroa mentioned, very outraged by the recent police shooting of Mr. Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the other recent police action. So they gathered last night around 6 o'clock or so at the Public Safety Complex, and there was very, I would say, a muted police presence, very few police officers. There were no police following them on their march, at least that I saw, from the Public Safety Complex, up Atwells Avenue, up to Knight Street, back around, down Broadway. I saw almost no police whatsoever. And the march was, it was passionate, but it was peaceful. I don't believe there were any arrests at all. I didn't notice any disturbances or fights or anything. They really were able to moderate, their presence in the streets of Providence. So I didn't really see any problems. And that's notable. The police weren't there, and there weren't these types of problems. I think that is a stark contrast to the kind of violence by the Providence Police and Rhode Island State Police that we saw, for example, on the night of July 23rd. That was a demonstration that my understanding was it had been called by a group called Back the Blue. And I think Back the Blue is a pro-police organization. I got there probably around 6:50 p.m. or so, and I saw about 9 Back the Blue protesters. And what was interesting to me was they were kind of gathered in the parking lot of the Public Safety Complex, kind of the northern edge of that parking lot. And they were obviously very friendly with the police. They were talking with the police. It was a very kind of cordial relationship they seemed to have with the police. And there was kind of further on down the street towards Washington Street, you could see a small group of counter protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters, but a very small group. And obviously it's a public safety complex, so police cars were moving around unimpeded, etc. Around maybe 7:10 p.m., there was a police officer there directing traffic. And it wasn't until around 7:35 or so that the Black Lives Matter protesters kind of moved up from Washington Street and were having a counter protest. And at that point, it became very clear that the police were not neutral arbitrators or neutral referees, but that they were very, I would say, partisan. The Back the Blue protesters were able to kind of move about freely. They could walk wherever they wanted. They had one fellow had a white pickup truck parked across the street in that short street next to the parking garage, and he would lean on the horn and blast the horn to try to drown out the Black Lives Matter protesters. And he was not, reprimanded at all by the police. And that same fellow was kind of wandering around through the whole area on both sides of the street. But what we saw happen was, as soon as the Black Lives Matter protesters tried to move into the street and move towards the the east side of Dean Street, all of a sudden you saw a huge police response. Police in full riot gear with their batons out, and moving very aggressively. And that's when this young woman was arrested there. And I don't know if I can share. Would it be okay if I share the screen to show some pictures? I'm going to try to do it here.
Mr. Evans, if you're going to share pictures, they need to be made part of the public record, and I would prefer that they need to be sent to me immediately, because they need to be made part of the public record if something is being shown, so that it can be preserved for future people who want to view the what's happening with this public meeting. If you were to email it to me, I'd prefer that I share them for you. I can send you a quick email so you can respond to that.
Okay.
And you could continue your presentation, and then maybe you could show that as soon as you get my email. Unless you'd like to wait.
That's fine. At any rate, I'll just continue. It was very clear that the people that were supporting Back the Blue, that were supporting the police, were able to walk wherever they wanted. They were able to have a mobile sound system that they could sing songs and kind of try to drown out the Black Lives Matter protesters. But as far as the Black Lives Matter protesters, as I said, when they tried to move towards the east side of Dean Street, the police grabbed this young woman. She was, very small. I would say maybe 5 feet tall at most. She did not appear to be any kind of threat to anybody. The police grabbed her, and in one of the pictures I'll try to show, you can see the police are grabbing her, and meanwhile, the Back the Blue supporter is just kind of casually walking by. So,
Mr. Evans, sorry to interrupt you. If you're only going to show images, and you feel very comfortable using the share screen functionality, I can allow you to do that. It's just if you're going to share any type of document, then I would need that document, because someone might not be able to see it really quickly if you're going to refer to that. Okay?
Let me see if I can show an image then.
Okay.
See if this works here. Let's see. Okay. Does this show up on the screen? I don't know.
It does, and that's also why I caution, that your personal computer is now being displayed in a public meeting, and it will be, visible to the whole world and preserved for eternity. So, that's your choice. I did send you an email if you wanted to reply with those attachments, and I can share it one at a time. You shared a screen that's right now showing the directory of the files, and so you need to unshare that and just share the specific file that you've already opened up if you want to do that. And we also saw some other file flashes across the screen, so that's why I really recommend against that when you shared your screen. So.
Okay. Let's see here. All right.
And if you can, just use the option that shows only a specific window instead of your entire desktop. Otherwise, again, you're more than welcome to email me, respond to my email, and attach the files, and I can share them one at a time as you narrate.
Okay. Let's see if I can find your email. Okay, I see your email. Now try to respond to that. Okay. Let's see here. All right. All right. So if that email comes through, we can try to share some of those images. In any event, my suggestion is what I saw on Dean Street on July 23rd was, in my view, a really excessive use of force against one part of a protest, against one side, if you will, of a public protest, and whereas the other side was allowed to basically have free reign and do pretty much whatever they wanted to do. So a few days later, there was another series actually of public demonstrations on July 25th. There were several earlier in the day at the State House, and then there was a large march that again kind of began at the public safety complex, and I think again you just saw an incredible a show of force with police with sticks and full riot armor, really preceding any kind of confrontation. What I saw there that night on July 25th was the police essentially escalating the situation, where they came out in their riot gear with their nightsticks in a very aggressive way, escalating the situation. And then at least, I believe, 3 arrests that happened on Partington Way on the east side of the public safety complex, where the police grabbed people, and then in some of the videos you could see the police, after they had grabbed people, beating them with the sticks. So that seemed like really an excessive use of force that I don't think was necessary. I think it escalated things and really made things worse. And again, I would contrast it to the march that happened last night, where there was almost no police presence, and the protest went on, and it was a peaceful example of people expressing their First Amendment rights. The other thing I wanted to mention is, my colleague, Attorney Jane Marquez, was actually also legal observing with the National Lawyers Guild on July 23rd and 25th. And then we also invited a friend of ours from Uprise RI as well. And I mentioned this to Jose Batista. I don't know if you all are familiar with Uprise RI. It's an independent news source founded by reporter Steve Alquist. I think it kind of grew out of his reporting of the Burrillville events in 2015, but it covers issues of social justice, human rights, politics, and climate change. And Celine Means, who's here, was a reporter with Uprise RI and captured some of those events on video that happened on July 25th. And we might be able to share those videos with you as well.
Mr. Evans, I do have those images, and I see there's a B, C, and D. So if you'd like to request which order I show them in, I'm happy to.
Let's just try alphabetical order and see what happens.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so this is an image, a photograph from July 23rd, and you can see the Black Lives Matter protesters are on the west side of Dean Street, and it's not a large group. It's maybe 24 or so, and you can see that there's a line of police where they're holding their sticks there. They're all in armor. None of them are wearing face masks. And they're moving aggressively to kind of force the Black Lives Matter protesters on one side of the street. And you can also see they're all facing towards the Black Lives Matter protesters. The blue demonstrators are essentially in the police parking lot behind these police here. Sean, can we go to the next image?
Sure.
All right, and this is just another image. You can see the back, the blue demonstrators. They have this image, this American flag with a blue line on it, and they're kind of behind the police. Can we go to the next image? And this is the image I was talking about before. Actually, Jane Marquez, I think, took this photograph, and she may be able to speak more to it. But the young woman was with the Black Lives Matter protesters, and you can see the police are kind of tackling her. And then the fellow in the white T-shirt there was with the Back the Blue protest. He's allowed to just walk wherever he wants, but the police are directing their enforcement against the Black Lives Matter protesters. And to me, this was a very stark contrast and a graphic image. And then behind that young woman there, you can see a whole group of police. They're essentially piling on a young man that was also arrested from the Black Lives Matter protest. Right.
Yeah, this is Jane Marquez. If I may add, at that point, that gentleman with the Back the Blue protest was actually not only he was the same gentleman who was allowed to honk his horn while everyone was speaking, but he was actually also allowed to go behind the counter protesters with Black Lives Matter and just walk freely throughout their group. There didn't seem to be any real hostility between them, but he was allowed to walk freely through there. The police never stopped him from trying to enter and mingle through that group. Yet as soon as someone tried to cross, notice in those photos the police are only facing in one direction.
So, in any event, the other thing we wanted to show you were the videos that Celine shot of the arrests on July 25th. And I don't know what the easiest way to do that. Celine's probably more technically adept than I am. She may be able to just share her screen.
Yes, I have the videos ready to be shown. I can screen share directly to them. But clerk, I'm sure that you have some things to say.
If you want to take a shot, you're more than welcome to. Again, my caution is we're really just trying to protect you as someone who's presenting information, because you are sharing information from your own machine, and you could inadvertently display personal material belonging to you. So, but if you feel comfortable sharing that, I will open that up so you as a panelist can share. And there might be a special setting that you might have to use so that the participants can actually hear the audio, but maybe we'll get lucky, and if you play it, it will pick up the audio, because Zoom is made to pick up the audio from the microphone, so it can hear you speak, but not necessarily from the computer itself. So we might not be able to hear the audio if there's good audio.
Okay, so were you saying, okay, Ben, which video should I show first? Should I show the car person or the other video? Oh, you're muted.
I think we should do the car first.
Okay.
Yeah.
right. Y'all can see that? Okay.
We can.
Okay, I'm sorry that was out of order. Let me open up the other one.
I think that's fine. I know it wasn't the one we were intending to show, but I think it did dramatically show, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. That picture shows what I was trying to convey about the very aggressive kind of like use of force by the police, and you could see them you could see those sticks moving up in the air and coming down on people that they had grabbed. So in any event, I think that's an important video to show the way the police were treating demonstrators in Providence on the night of July 25th.
I think I'd like to add here in that, I think one of the things is that it really does show that, that when the police come out there, assuming hostile intent, things get escalate very quickly. I mean, I am a veteran. I served in a combat zone, and one of the things that we went over every time we moved was an escalation of force. And when is it appropriate to show force and show that we are capable of using force? And it wasn't all the time. We were in hostile territory, but that doesn't mean that we were automatically brandishing our weapons every time. So, when they came out, as people were just moving forward, when they already had their nightsticks at the ready, I just, it seems to me that the police here really were not just prepared for an escalation, but actually promoting it by the way that they showed up.
Celine, let's see if we can show that other video. Thank you.
Yep. Here it is. I do want to say, I think this is also a movie where I was pushed for this movie.
So what you just saw in that video that Celine took was a young man being arrested. He's asking the police, can he move his car? And I can tell you, I was there that night. I was a few feet away. Every time I tried to get a closer look to try to document the arrests that were going on, the police very aggressively, very forcefully pushed me away. They said, you can't come over here. I know that some of the other legal observers there were also pushed away. And you can see that young man is trying to move his car. He's asking the police, can he move his car? And he ends up getting arrested. And I think that's typical of what was happening. And I can also tell you that on the night of July 23rd, as the young woman was being arrested, I was trying to get a better look to see what was going on. And one of the police officers pushed me out of the way, knocked my glasses off, and was screaming in my face, you're next, implying that if I didn't move away, that he was going to arrest me. And you can also see in all of those pictures and all of those videos, the police are not following Center for Disease Control guidelines whatsoever. There are some police that are masked, very few of them, most of them are not. The police officer that screamed in my face on July 23rd was not wearing a mask. These are examples of the ways in which the Providence Police Department is not able to fairly and neutrally regulate these First Amendment activities when the subject of those First Amendment activities is the police themselves. And I don't mean to, I'm sorry I've been talking so much. I don't mean to not let Celine or Jing make some comments as well.
I really don't have any comment, just as a reporter. as a videographer, I am just there to be the person to document, and so.
Sorry, we're having trouble hearing you.
I just wanted to say that I don't have a comment in that I can answer any questions, and I can go back to the footage and scrub through. We can pause moments or whatever is needed, but I was just being there as a camera to observe.
Okay, Mr. Evans, is that the end of the presentation?
I think that's all we have for now, yes.
Okay, all right. So what I'll do is I'll open it up to members of the board to ask questions.
Members of the board and or executive director?
And or executive director, yes.
I'll just say something really quickly and then ask a question because my audio went kind of hangwire when it came time to introduce Ben. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. I'll give a little bit of context as to the presentation. We have received a formal complaint regarding the July 23 protest outside the public safety complex, and so some of this material helps us understand a little bit more about what happened that night. And we received a phone call, not necessarily a formal complaint, but a phone call asking about and expressing concerns about what I believe was the second protest on July 25. And so my quick follow-up to Ben is, are you familiar with a particular scene where there was a line of protesters and a police car, like an SUV, blaring the lights and kind of revving at the protesters? Are you familiar with that? Was that July 25? Were you?
Was, and I have footage of that.
Okay, so you were there.
That was on Elmwood Avenue, and I think myself and Celine and Jane were all present there. That was later in the same evening on Elmwood Avenue, I believe.
Can you speak a little bit towards that? Because I'll tell you my thinking. We did receive a phone call about that. I expressed to the person who called that they could, if they were a witness, file a formal complaint. Ultimately, that didn't happen. But since you folks were witnesses, if you could tell us a little bit about your experience in that portion of the protest, if you will.
I have it pulled up if needed.
Yeah, I think maybe Celine could just show the video. That might speak to it.
I will warn everybody, it's very loud. I'm going to turn down the volume, but I don't know how you guys might hear it and such.
Thank you.
So that was the line of cars coming up, and it is a lot more shaky, but there were some moments of revving. I will quickly come to this point.
This is what they do, though.
So those are the notable incidents of the interactions at Elmwood.
I'll take that's why I asked about that. I saw that video or another video from the same night posted on the internet, and there was a question as to whether, I mean, I'll just tell you the question that I saw posted on the internet, whether that practice of, driving the car at the people, not necessarily hitting them, obviously, and we can't say that they intended to hit them, but as a clear intimidation tactic, blaring the lights, full sound. I was wondering if in your experience, either with National Lawyers Guild or covering other protests, whether you can speak to whether that sort of tactic is used, whether it's legal, whether you know of a jurisdiction where it's illegal, just because, again, we have received phone calls expressing concern about that.
Yeah, I would just jump in and say that I was legal observing in Central Falls, Rhode Island, near the Riot detention facility a number of months ago, when one of the correctional officers intentionally drove his truck into some protesters who were seated on the sidewalk as peaceful as you could imagine. There were people affiliated with a group called Never Again Action in Providence, and they were doing a nonviolent civil disobedience protest across the street from the Wyatt detention facility, and that correctional officer drove his truck intentionally into them. This reminded me of that. It was scary because that police car was moving quickly. It didn't seem to have any concern that there were people doing a civil disobedience nonviolent action on Elmwood Avenue there. To me, that was an assault with a dangerous weapon. And did not appear to be in any way justified by what people were doing. That's my view of it. Others might have a different view, but it was scary the way the police were acting that night.
Thank you, Ben.
Go ahead, Susan.
Ben, have you had a chance to look at the police department policies around large groups, or how to deal with, a potential, issue, use of force with a large group, and kind of done an analysis as to what happened against actual policy?
No, I haven't done that.
Okay, thanks.
I would actually be curious whether or not these, maybe their standard operating procedures regarding crowd control are available to the public or to people who are interested.
Thank you for that.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chair. Just in regard of the second portion of the video, where there was a lone protester with a sign. I'm sorry if I had difficulty seeing that, but what was that depicting exactly? The concern that the guild has.
Oh, it's not any guilt. That was just of my own vocation. I showed it. They just pushed him forward.
I see. Okay.
Nothing did. I think that's of my own vocation to show.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. If there are no further questions, I'd like to thank our guests for coming in, presenting with this group today. I think there are some legitimate concerns around policy, and I think as Board Member Dorita pointed out, looking at policy when it comes to crowd control, and we're certainly within our purview to look at that policy as we move forward. So I want to thank you all and appreciate you sharing this information with us.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you.